January 1944. Night settles over the dark Pacific, heavy with salt and engine oil. Low clouds drift across a moonlit sea as steel hulls cut silently through the water. Somewhere beyond the horizon, an island lies hidden, jungled, fortified, and waiting. On the bridge of an American cruiser, radar screens glow faintly green, sweeping invisible arcs across the darkness. No one can see the enemy, yet the enemy has already been found. For Japanese naval officers trained in a doctrine shaped by optics and honor, this moment would mark a quiet shock that rippled through the remainder of the war. Imperial Japanese strategy had been built on visual contact, daylight maneuver, and decisive engagement. Battles were meant to be seen, felt, and answered face to face. But here, in the blackness of night, American ships were preparing to unleash precise naval gunfire guided not by eyes or stars, but by radio waves, an unseen force turning darkness into advantage. Radar-directed naval gunfire was not an accident of technology. It was the product of years of American investment in industrial science, electrical engineering, and naval doctrine. By 1942, the U.S. Navy had deployed advanced fire control radar systems, such as the SG Surface Search Radar and the Mark III and Mark VIII fire control radars. These systems allowed warships to detect targets beyond visual range, calculate distance and bearing, and feed firing solutions directly into gun directors. Shells no longer depended on sight, they followed mathematics. For Japanese officers observing these engagements, often from shattered ships, damaged shore positions, or intercepted after-action intelligence, the experience was deeply unsettling. Night had once been Japan's ally. The Imperial Navy excelled at nighttime torpedo attacks, especially with the formidable Type 93 Long Lance torpedo. Darkness was doctrine. Darkness was safety. But American radar erased that advantage entirely. The contrast between expectation and reality was stark. Japanese commanders expected naval gunfire to be inaccurate at night, slow to adjust, and dependent on flares or searchlights. Instead, they encountered salvos that arrived without warning, walking methodically across decks and shore batteries with frightening accuracy. Ships were hit before they could even identify the direction of attack. Shore installations were destroyed by vessels that remained invisible, silent except for the distant thunder of guns. One recurring symbol echoed through these encounters, the steady, mechanical pulse of radar itself, a soundless signal, endlessly rotating, indifferent to darkness or weather. It represented something far larger than a machine. It embodied American industrial reach and organizational depth. Radar was not just equipment, it was abundance turned into precision. Historical records confirm the psychological impact. After the Battle of Surigao Strait in October 1944, part of the larger Battle of Leyte Gulf, Japanese survivors reported shock at the effectiveness of American gunfire in total darkness. U.S. battleships and cruisers, many of them veterans of Pearl Harbor rebuilt and modernized, used radar fire control to annihilate an approaching Japanese force before visual contact was ever made. The engagement was over in minutes. It was the last battleship versus battleship action in history, and it was decided by electronics. Captured Japanese naval reports later analyzed by U.S. intelligence acknowledged the decisive role of radar. One Imperial Navy assessment noted that American ships possessed the ability to fire with full accuracy without illumination, concluding that traditional night tactics were rendered ineffective. This was not simply tactical defeat, it was doctrinal collapse. The transformation that followed was subtle but profound. For some Japanese officers, radar-directed gunfire forced a reconsideration of the war itself. The conflict was no longer just about courage, sacrifice, or even naval skill. It was about systems, factories, universities, supply chains, and a society capable of turning scientific theory into mass-produced reality. American democracy, often dismissed by Axis ideologues as soft or disorganized, revealed itself as brutally efficient when mobilized. The symbolic object, the radar pulse, returned again and again. Unlike a battleship gun or torpedo, it could not be seen or challenged directly. It did not demand bravery from its operators. It demanded coordination, training, and trust in institutions. Radar did not care about rank or tradition. It rewarded preparation. As the war progressed, Japanese efforts to counter radar lagged behind. Limited industrial capacity, shortages of rare materials, and fragmented research slowed development. While Japan fielded some radar systems late in the war, they were few, unreliable, and often inferior. Meanwhile, American radar grew more advanced, more integrated, and more widespread on ships, aircraft, and coastal defenses. The invisible net tightened. In the aftermath of defeat, surviving Japanese officers reflected on these encounters with clarity stripped of ideology. Many later acknowledged that radar-directed fire symbolized an imbalance that could not be overcome by spirit alone. It demonstrated how a society organized around mass education, open scientific exchange, and industrial scale could dominate modern warfare. The epilogue of this story does not lie in the wreckage of ships or the silence of sunken guns. It lies in what radar represented beyond the battlefield: the ability to see without sight, to coordinate without chaos, to strike with precision rather than volume. It was abundance harnessed, not squandered. Freedom expressed through systems that empowered individuals to act as part of something larger. On those dark Pacific nights, Japanese officers were not only stunned by naval gunfire guided by unseen waves, they were witnessing a deeper truth of the 20th century, that modern power flowed not just from weapons, but from the invisible networks of knowledge, industry, and democratic organization behind them. And once revealed, that truth could never be unseen.